everybody? Happy Labor Day weekend. We are back here for season 3 of the Mental Game podcast. We are looking forward to continuing to have those tough conversations about mental health awareness and athletics and change the narrative about how the sporting world views mental health awareness. Troy, we're on our third season doing this. We've both learned a lot about ourselves and mental health. We've learned a lot from the other athletes we've interacted on. What are you most looking forward to this year?
Just more talking, more points of views onto what causes mental health, how we can get better at, handling mental health as athletes and as a community. I'm just excited to keep pushing there.
Yeah, I think we've had athletes from, almost every team on campus, if not close to every team. We've had some administrators, we have some more administrators again this year. And we did the first ever mental health panel last spring, which I thought was super productive. It was pretty cool to see some athletes get some uncomfortable, tell us their stories, and then have an opportunity to kind of open up to a panel and learn from some experts as well as their peers and how they handle their mental health.
It was really just a cool event to have, right? And have people sit there and watch. It's kind of like a live podcast for us. It was fun. Look forward to doing more as the year goes on, hopefully.
Yeah, and with that being said, the goal this year is to do a mental health panel in the fall through SAC again, and then we're going to try to do another one again in the spring semester so we can kind of maximize. Mental health, as I brought it up in our SAC group, it changes throughout whether you're in season, you're out of season, there's different factors, classes change, there's a bunch to go into it, so we decided we thought it was important to have it both semesters. It doesn't just go away one semester, it's always something that's ever flowing and always important.
365, right? 365 days a year, 20%. So.
Yeah, and then we've got some other exciting guests on the show this year. Obviously, today we'll have our new athletic director here at Minot State, and then down the road we're going to have our compliance officer, Madeline, on the show. Obviously, that mental health panel. We have one of the Wiggins basketball GAs who would like to come on the show, and then again, there's more athletes that continue to talk and grow through this topic this year. That being said, we're going to introduce our guest for today. He's the new athletic director here at Minot State. Started in the end of July. He's been getting right into it, and I was fortunate enough to sit in on those athletic director interviews and kind of get to know him super well, and I'm super excited to have him on the show. So with us today is athletic director Forde. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it. I'm doing well.
I really appreciate you coming on the show. We're excited to have you. We tried to get the athletic director on, the old athletic director on before he ended up leaving, so excited that we got you on here.
Absolutely.
So we're just going to get right into it. Basically, as I mentioned, I got to sit in and have lunch with you. We got to talk a little bit during that interview process. And you had mentioned how you wanted to bring in speakers and talk about important things about mental health awareness and just of that nature. So what are some of your goals as an athletic director, kind of focusing towards the mental health awareness?
Sure. I think the one thing we got to do is give everybody opportunities. And we got to give people opportunities to get better and better themselves, whether that's bringing in speakers, learning about themselves, learning about their teammates, and so they can really learn about the mental health. Because you're right, it is a 365, 7 days a week, 24/7, and it ebbs and flows. Sometimes mental health is really strong and you're feeling really good about yourself and others, and sometimes you don't. And that doesn't mean you have poor mental health. It ebbs and flows, and sometimes you feel good, sometimes you don't. And you got to understand what makes you feel good, what makes you feel poor, you feel down, and how do you get out of that? Because you don't want to get down there in that path and all of a sudden stay down there. You want to make sure that you can get yourself out and teach people how to do that. That's one of my goals, is to have those speakers, have those programming where they can come in. And when you get to a point, how do you handle yourself? How do you treat yourself to get out of it?
Yeah, I think that's really important. Again, it's 365 somewhere. I think before we really started getting into this podcast, it wasn't really talked about much at our school. Mental health, maybe here and there, and locker room conversations, but we're really working to make it more of a school-wide thing. And we have the Green Bandana Project for mental health awareness. Obviously, we do the panel announcement, but we're really trying to kick down that door and bring up those discussions.
Yeah, get more people involved, right? Everybody goes through it some form, and some people realize that they're going through it. So the more we can talk about it, the more people realize, hey, I can get better at this too, and build a better community around it.
Well, I think that's when I was a student athlete and when I was coaching, that was never talked about. This was something that never was discussed. It was just, suck it up and get through it. It wasn't something we talked about. It was something you just kind of had to deal with yourself. And there was a lot of things that happened that people just kind of didn't want to talk about, didn't want to address. And thank goodness it's been addressed the last handful of years really, really well by the NCAA and really pushed by college boards and professional student athletes and athletes that are make a living that way, because it affects everybody, no matter if you're in high school, junior high, up to the pros. It's every level it affects mental health. It's very, very important.
Yeah. Another topic that you and I kind of discussed during that little luncheon that we had, you mentioned how important it was to you to really get to know your athletes, and how at some universities they don't even know who their athletic director is. They've never met him, but you really emphasize how important that open door policy is. So what is it about that in terms of mental health that you think is important?
I think it's important just so that they know who I am. They know that I care about them. If they do have a problem, they can come see me. I'm not going to be too busy for them. I'll drop things and make sure they get taken care of. Like during the football game this past weekend, I was walking around talking to different student athletes. I was helping work the game or just in the stands. And then yesterday at the soccer game, there was a lot of student athletes and volleyballs back from their trips, and I sat and talked to them for a little bit about how their trip was, how they did, and obviously I know the result, but I want to know how they're doing. How was that trip, and how were they treated? How did they feel? That kind of stuff. So I want the student athletes to feel that I'm very approachable and I'm able to or willing to talk to them about whatever they want to talk about.
Yeah, I think it's really important because for student athletes, the athletic community is their community for 4 to 5, 6 years with COVID, and if you don't feel comfortable being able to go to talk to those people, it can be really difficult. So having that open door policy, not only at the athletic director level, but at coaching level too, is very important.
Yeah, no, it helps. Like people are gonna be here for a long time. Like my case, 6 years, you're 5. It's good to get to know people that are above you that can help you with certain things, whether the trip, like you're saying, how you were treated on the road, or might not win the game, but you get taken care of the right way, right? That all adds to mental health. It's all full circle.
That's right. That's absolutely right. I think that it's important for those student athletes to understand that I am available, because a lot of times they've never had an AD that was approachable. It's someone that they didn't want to feel comfortable talking to them, but I'm one of those persons. I will go up to people and talk to them and just make sure that they understand that I am actually, I say what I mean. I mean what I say. So.
Yeah, and when we had our head basketball coach working on last season, he discussed how, like, even for him, sometimes people just need to be heard, even if you don't have a solution or don't really know what's the best way to approach it. If they can just feel better to have someone who will just have the door open.
That's absolutely right. Absolutely right. It's because they want to be vent. They want to feel like there's someone there that got their back. So that's part of our job as administrators, not just myself as AD, but you talk about Madeline, you talk about Andrew Petco, you talk about Sal, you got all our administrators. We have a number in our office that they have mental health that we're taking care of themselves, of course, but we have to make sure that we are there for our coaches and for the student athletes.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, mental health has changed a lot over your time in the athletic community. You've been at every level, being in the athletic community, from playing to coaching to administrating. So can you kind of discuss how you've seen shifts and where you see it going down the road? Well,
I think that it's more open now than it's ever been. I think it was never talked about before, like I mentioned before. But I think now people are willing to discuss it. People are willing to talk about it, and that's only going to benefit everybody. In the future, I think you keep having those conversations like you talked about, have those roundtable discussions, have open forums where people can actually vent and hear other people's struggles, because everyone's struggling. At one point in time, everyone has struggles, and what they are and how they handle it is very, very important for people to understand that they're not alone.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, we've talked about with professional athletes going out and making it such a big point of emphasis. It's kind of just trickled down to all the other levels of athletics.
Yeah, it's kind of like once you see someone like Kyrie did, right, stepped out, said he had some problems. It's kind of like, hey, it's okay for me. The big 2-player to have problems. If he can have it at the big stage, I can have it in my stage, right?
Yeah, for sure. So a few of the campus changes that we've kind of discussed throughout the time of having this podcast was some athletes have brought up with the hiring process of new coaches, whether it's a head coach, assistant coach, or anyone within the athletics department, having kind of through the hiring process, necessarily screening them for like how important is their willingness to support the athletes through mental health. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's important to understand the coach, where they're coming from, what have they been a part of before, the kind of culture that they're part of in the program they're coming from, either as an assistant coach or as a head coach, and at what level, and what have they done, what the experience have they had with issues of student athletes and how they've handled it. So kind of really understanding their thoughts and feelings on it. It really affects, how they would come into our situation at our school. because some people have zero experience, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you got to be willing to do some things. You can't just be afraid to address it and just kind of leave it alone. You got to be willing to improve yourself. And so it's great if they have experience. It's great if they have ideas of what they'd want to do or what they've done. But if they don't, that's not going to be that's not going to be one that disqualifies them. But they got to be willing to show that they have the ability to grow, ability to learn, ability to join in, and not just sit on the sideline. Because if you sit on the sideline, that means their student athletes, whatever sport that they're coaching, also feels like they're on the sideline, and everyone's going to be involved.
Yeah, like in the sports psychology book that I'm reading for class right now, it talks about like the different styles, coaching styles, and how the best coaches are the ones who, like obviously you want to win, you want to be successful. At the end of the day, you got to put the athletes first and the improvement first. And oftentimes we think improvement could be physically, but a lot of times the mental improvement, athletes play at their best when they're at their mentally best.
Absolutely. They got to believe in themselves. They got to be feeling well. They got to, even if they're having a bad day, they got to kind of be able to flip that script and really have confidence in their teammates and their abilities to, expect to have success. Success doesn't necessarily mean wins and losses, but just play well. Do as well as you can and be happy with that. Because sometimes we beat ourselves down so much. We got to make sure that we can understand that we might not have won the game. We might not have, we might have had some bad plays here and there, but if we did what we could do and we worked hard at it, we did. The results happen. So, but we got to walk into those situations expecting to have success, rely on our talents, rely on our teammates' abilities, and just see what happens. We got to just believe in ourselves, have that belief.
Mm-hmm. One of the other campus changes that have been kind of brought up while we've been working on this podcast has been, so student athletes are all required to do like the Title IX training every year, where you go through the training, and people brought up, we do something similar where coaches every year are required to do with mental health support type training, where they're learning, here's how to identify with an athlete struggling, and here's different ways we can help, or these types of deals.
I think the one thing that we're doing, I mentioned this to you before, and in SAC, was we're going to be doing a lot of developmental stuff as far as personalities, and that's going to help with mental health. And we're doing, the NCAA does a great job with that as far as allowing us to do programming with DISC assessment, for example. That's a personality assessment. And we're going to do that with all the SAC representatives, and I'm going to do that with the coaches and administrators. And so we can really understand ourselves and help us understand other people as well, and how other people think and feel, how we should treat them, because everybody shouldn't be treated the same. It's treating people, fairly equally, making sure that we meet them where they're at and understand the different personalities that people have. So I think those kind of trainings we'll do a lot of. We'll have speakers on it, but the speakers are great, and some people learn a lot from speakers, but a lot of people learn from doing. And you got to make sure that you're involved with different assessments, different personality tests, different activities that get people involved that really kind of grow you as individuals. Because again, I got to meet you guys where you guys are at as well. I can't just say we're going to do this, this, and this. We got to make sure that I listen to what you guys want, what you guys feel is important.
For sure, I think going back to kind of that sports psychology book that I'm reading, it talks about how as coaches, as you're training your different athletes, having different styles of training different athletes, it's okay if it's the better that athlete in that sense, rather than just like I'm going to train it differently because they're not as good as this athlete type deal. Exactly.
Well, and the thing is, it used to be the fact where student athletes would just do what the coaches say. That's what the coach wanted. Just do what they say. A lot now, the student athletes have, in a positive way, been encouraged to ask why, and so the coaches really have to be better at their craft to understand, to explain reasoning behind the drills or reasoning behind doing, whatever they might be doing in practice. Just so coaches have to be able to understand that student athletes have that right or ability to ask the question why, and that's an important question. And this coach has got to be good enough in their craft they can answer that question.
Yeah, I know. Al tells us all the time whenever we get a new lifting phase or he introduces a new type of lift or whatever it may be, he always encourages ask me why if we're doing this for this type in competition season versus out of competition, all those types of things.
It's kind of like we got out of statutes this past week. We expanded those in the years or whatever. Like Ben Hardy's asking questions like, why are we doing this? It's just kind of more movement, more put it from what we do in the weight room to the football field, right? It's kind of good to ask questions and try to figure everything out.
Mm-hmm. And when they do have the answer, it really see the help that it brings these athletes. And then another campus change that's been discussed on this podcast is just like we have our trainers for our physical health, and then people brought up athletic counselors because obviously we have the 2 counselors on campus, but they have to be available for pretty much anyone on campus. So people have talked about, is there a way where we get like one athletic counselor just for athletics, something of that nature?
Well, we're kind of making steps towards that. What we're doing is we have hours now during the week. I think a couple times a week that they're going to be available to come in, and they're going to be in our area. They're going to be in the dome. In the Christensen room, I think they're going to have a couple hours a week availability. So then student athletes can feel like they can go there because that's where they live. The student athletes live in the dome because that's their locker room. That's where they work out. That's the training room, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of more a comfort zone. And so we're bringing them into our area. So then that will help hopefully get student athletes feel more comfortable to go to them and talk to them. Because sometimes walking across campus, they just don't want to have that walk. They don't want to be seen heading that direction. They don't want, and that's just the way students sometimes feel, which is okay. We got to get over that too. But if we can help, take that baby step of getting them into our area, that's what we're going to do. So that's what we've kind of set up.
And that's awesome. You definitely have that stigma of like, I don't want people seeing that I'm going to go get help, especially in the athletics world. It's seen as if you're a male, you're being soft, and if you're a female, you're being emotional. But kind of just offering that easier access, that they can see a lot of benefit.
Yeah, it makes it easier. Like you said, they're in our area. Like we were there on game day from 8 a.m. to 8:30 till 4 or 5 p.m. in the afternoon. Like you're there all day, like you said. If they can come to us, it would just make life a little easier, make it feel normal to go talk to them instead of walking.
Yep.
Where you don't really go, right?
And I think it's important for everybody. Like we talked about, everyone's got mental health. It's how you're handling different situations during the year, during the day, during the week. And you never know what's going to happen. So I think having everybody go visit would be healthy, no matter if they feel they need to or not. It's a good experience to have.
Definitely just get the opportunity, feeling comfortable, so that if you ever do need to go into that situation,
That's right.
It's not your first time doing
That's
so.
right.
And then sticking on the sports psychology, because clearly I like this class.
You must love it. Kudos to your professor.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm sitting here reading this book, and it's a master's program class, and as I'm reading all of these different subjects related to sports psychology, I'm sitting here thinking, like, I wish I would have known all of this my first year of college as an athlete, not my 5th year playing college athletics. So I guess, and the professor is Dr. Ekman, so I haven't really met with her about this, but I think it would be cool to have her talk to our athletes down the road sometime, because she's an expert in the field. And Jordan Sanford, one of our teammates in the class with me, he agreed with me, like, a lot of this stuff would be like super beneficial to, especially the young athletes who are their first time away from home. It's their first time making decisions on their own. They don't have mom and dad right there with them. I think it'd be pretty cool if we could find a way to set that up.
Well, I think that's important. The freshmen, especially, it is their first time away for most of them. And so how do they react to being let free, basically? Because depending on their social life at home, what their rules with their mom and dad were, coming to college can be a big adjustment, and it's quick. It happens immediately. What helps student athletes is they have a team. They have people they can go to that's kind of like their family. The non-student athletes are the ones that really got to be watched out for, because they don't have anybody. They're by themselves. So we got to make sure that we take care of our student athletes, but the student body is taken care of as well.
Sure, yeah, I definitely like that. I think just think back to, especially for the fall sports, most teams report early. So not only are they away from home, but there's no school to keep them structured.
That's right.
It's just their sport for that month or whatever it is.
And you report, like you're saying, you do the family, like at least if you report early with your team, you're going to get to know some guys right away.
Yeah.
Like you got to know if you're a friend, you got to know 105 other football players from classes. But it would be tough on most students to just come here, move in a week, and then you got class on Tuesday, and you don't really know anybody but your roommate, right?
And we got to get them out. And that's our job as administrators, not just athletes for athletes, but for the general student body, to get them out. That's why there is that welcome week. We try to get all those activities going on that they do a great job of on campus. But we just kind of make sure that they don't spend their time in the dorm by themselves. They get out and kind of break through that shyness, that being alone. Because if you can get out and about and meet people, that's going to make your life a lot easier.
100%. Yeah, no, I definitely like that. I think we just continue to find different ways to just make the conversation more recognizable, and normality, where like it's okay to just talk about it. Like I think when Cody and Zoya spoke at the mental health meeting, I'm sure they were nervous standing up in front of however many athletes came to watch, but I think I'm sure at least one athlete in that in this crowd, seeing that felt more comfortable. At least talking to one person down the road because they saw Cody and Zoya stand up.
It takes a while to carry your experience that first stuff on the carry that setting, like from cameras and 50 or so people there.
No.
Before we take off, do you have any last thoughts you'd like to add about topic things?
Well, I just think that we got to make sure that this is, first of all, what you guys do is very important. I don't know if you guys, what your viewership is. I'm not sure how many people come up to you and talk about the podcast, but I think what you're doing is important to be out there, making sure that you talk to your football team, the guys that you're with every day, but also make sure you talk to our other student athletes. Every other sport, they're going through the same thing you guys are going through. So make sure you reach out to those other people and make sure that they're doing what they need to do to take care of themselves.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Anytime.
We're really excited to continue this conversation. We look forward to a wonderful rest of the first semester and this season of the mental game. We're excited to continue to change that narrative and really just bring to light the importance of mental health awareness in athletics. That's all we got for you today. Go Beavers.
Go Beavers.